I think I love our part of the model that is really talking about building the business and then sustaining it. And what are those, what's the blend of individual leader attributes in addition to attributes that are really critical to deploying the business practices that are going to make the organization successful. So I think I think as we're looking at it, and we're making sure that as we apply this model and we see some of these new emerging future of work things coming out and how things are shifting so rapidly, in the workforce, that we understand how people are able to leverage the model and what our learnings are from that as well. So I think it's a very exciting time and just a lot of stuff going on.
Mm-hmm. I love that you in your description or response to the who of the backbone is changing, kind of got into these next nuanced pieces of what we mean by backbone, right? Because the backbone isn't just the who, and that we have all of these different types of people that are that they're really paid to lead something, right?
Mhm.
They're paid to lead something. But there are also, in my opinion, two other nuances to this backbone. And one of them is really about the backbone. They're both processes, but one of them is about the backbone process that makes all of those 89.9 million leaders strong as humans, right? Makes them strong leader contributors. And the other backbone process is, it's the backbone process that allows that leader of something, right, to be able to run a really strong production line, right, to lead a really fantastic transformation, to lead a really fantastic function on behalf of the organization, right? And so these two other nuances to backbone aren't about the who is the backbone of the organization and how that's changing, but they're process pieces. And these two process pieces, number one, are about how do we make the human strong? And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And number two, how do we help that human to make the business strong? Because both of those things need this strength in order to be vibrant contributors, living, growing organisms, as who they are, or in terms of what the business is there to accomplish in the first place. So let's just talk about the first one, which is, this backbone of what is it that makes the human strong, right? So we've got all these different types of leaders, and to kind of, when we summarize today, I'm actually going to open up a document on the Rejuvi platform. But when we talk about modern leadership, we often use these phrases called modern leadership is about helping all leaders on the modern leadership bench to become compassionate human leaders and to become fierce business leaders. And so that first backbone process is really about helping the leader to become a compassionate human leader. And the way that we do that is through this continuum of making them strong. I mean, you think about the continuum, and that's why I love using the word continuum, is you think about a continuum as, something long and strong, right? And so the long and strong continuum that makes the leader strong, the leader that sits on the modern leadership bench, is something that we call the think to drive continuum. And what this does is it is made up of 3 building blocks, and these building blocks start to become the essential structure that make this leader long and strong, helping them to deliver this compassionate human leadership to whatever it is that they're leading. And it starts with this first building block that is sometimes I call it IQ, and it's not intelligent quotient, but it's their ideation quotient. And we'll often call this the modern leader's SEE capability. And what that means is their ability to acknowledge what's going on the inside of them, the ideas that they may have, the perspectives that they have, the things that they see, and bringing them to fruition and outside of themselves for others to grab on, to grab hold to. Do you know what I mean? It's their C capability. It's their ideation quotient, their IQ. And then that building block, on top of that sits the second building block, which is, and many times I call that EQ. And that's not emotional quotient. It's what it's really EQ in modern leadership stands for environment quotient. Because when the stuff starts to come outside of the leader, the ideas, it starts to interact with the environment around them. And that environment has groups and it has people. So it's about the macro people skills and it's about the micro people skills and it's about interplay with those things so that the ideas are made better. But it also finishes with something, it's not just the macro and the micro people skills in the IQ section of this, but it is the ability to start to read things together as a group of people about what, do we or don't we go? When do we start to move forward with some ideas for our team or for our business, etc.? So we've got EQ or C capability of the leader. We have, wait, I did that incorrectly. We have IQ, which is the C capability of the leader. We have EQ, which is the no capability of the leader. And then the third building block is simply something that we call AQ or agility quotient, which is this leader's ability to start to inspire others so that they may have direction. And so this IQ, EQ, AQ, or see, know, do start to come together to produce this long and strong continuum that represents the backbone of one half of modern leadership, right? Which is how do we become leaders that are compassionate human leaders, right?
Right.
So that's one kind of backbone process. I think the second backbone process is really about how do we what is the backbone process for helping a compassionate human leader to become a fierce business leader at the same time. And there are 4 building blocks that actually come together to make that happen. And it's the 4 building blocks of strategic intent or kind of big picture stuff. And then it's some middle picture things, which we call business unit intelligence and also targeting, midterm targeting. And then it's the modern leader's ability to kind of implement. And these 4 building blocks come together to make this continuum come alive, this backbone, and it's the business's ability to build and sustain itself, over time. So all of a sudden we have these fantastic backbone processes that come together. One that makes the leader strong, one that makes the business strong. They're highly correlated and they can be causated. And these 2 backbone processes are the modern leadership processes that absolutely have to come together for the modern leadership bench, for these 89.9 million leaders who are leading something because the future of work has arrived. That's the modern backbone and the nuances because of it.
Yeah, and I think those business practices are so critical, and I think what I love about our platform and the Rejuvi model is that we can quickly assess those and give people some feedback on where their strengths are, where there are areas to work on. And then most importantly, we can guide them with additional resources that will allow them to address any areas they want to work on further very rapidly and effectively, and then also um, enable them with a tool set that they can use with their teams and, across the organization if they're working on a broad program or whatever the case may be. It's not just a matter of, the identification of, areas for work and strengths, but also the ability to guide and change behavior where needed. So
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
the convergence of those is important, and then the ability to, implement them and have a
Mhm.
big impact.
Yeah. I'm gonna share my screen here and do just it's a bit of a demo, and let me do this for a second. Now I've got a document that is downloaded to my machine, but for those people who are watching us for the first time, in order to get this, you're just going to go to Rejuvi. You're going to go to the top right hand corner. You're going to log in. You're going to insert your login credentials, and you're going to enter the platform. And I think just to make things a little bit easier today, we pre-logged in and we downloaded a document from Resources to Go. And the document is one that we call the Modern Leadership Bench. And I think it's a fantastic way to start to showcase everything that we mean by backbone and the nuances about how backbone now looks, because the future of work has arrived. And you take a look at this beautiful picture. It's one that Rejuvi uses a lot, and it's always been super inspiring to me. I mean, let me just stop for a minute. When you take a look at this picture, Charlie, what are the things that, like pop out to you on this particular photograph?
Um, well, I would say I'll call that the rising sun. I don't know if we're looking west or east, but the rising sun. So, a lot of the day ahead. Um, you know, the the awesome mountain ranges, the greenery, and I don't know, those wood planks kind of reaching out with a bunch of opportunity for the new day. So that's kind of how I see it.
I love that. And I don't know if it's dawn or dusk either. But one of the things that I've always loved about this is that it feels like a picture of hope. It feels like, that you look at this, and I even notice this road. Do you see the road off to the left of the bench?
Oh, I didn't see that. Now I see it. Now that you
I
pointed it out.
often
Yep.
wonder what it's like to travel along that road, and where it actually takes you. And I like to think about this picture two ways. I think one is it's a representation of hope and the future of a modern leadership bench. And it can take an organization and its modern leadership team, and the people of the organization and the customers of the organization absolutely anywhere that they want to go. I love that. So, and this kind of really takes into account that this first nuance that we were talking about today, which was that picture of hope represents the modern leadership bench. And so many people sit on that now that haven't sat on it in the past. Of course, we've always thought about our senior leaders sitting on that bench, but we have sales leaders, right? Sales leaders who are working hard to build books of business, to to understand who the where the customers are, what their pains and gains are, and delivering value to them on an ongoing basis. We have service leaders who are account managers who are working inside of service units, ensuring that the services are delivered. We have team leaders that sit on that modern leadership bench, which are those that they might have the title of supervisor, they might have a title of production line leader, but they are also sit on the modern leadership bench. And then there's the expert leaders. and expert leaders, people often say, well, gosh, I can understand what a sales leader is. I can understand what a service leader is. But what exactly is an expert leader? And so if you look at inside of any organization, I often think that there are these enabling units. And these enabling units are like IT, the data and analytics, finance. They have this expertise that they're bringing, and that expertise has to be leveraged to help the people and the organization succeed. Those are your expert leaders. But these are all of the different people that sit on the modern leadership bench. They're leading something. And so I think two things are really important here to acknowledge, kind of taking it back to some of your opening comments about that you made about cost related. These are number one, underserved categories in terms of leadership. We haven't always delivered directioning and decisioning leadership counsel and help and support to these people. We do to senior leaders, not to all of them, but they have traditionally been a piece of the leadership development processes. But sales leaders, service leaders, team leaders, and expert leaders are gigantically underserved groups of people that are actually leading something. And I think the other thing that's really important to me is it's not just the who, but it's what you're actually bringing to them. And so it's serving them in different ways through these other nuances around making sure that there are two continuums, the things that help them to become strong, compassionate leaders at the same time as helping them to become fierce business leaders are actually occurring. So we've underserved them on so many levels. Do you know what I mean, Charlie? It's just this picture just speaks to me so much when you start looking at real people in real jobs that haven't been served, and now the modern leadership bench is here.
Yeah, and I think, and what's really important about that, I think, is, number one, from kind of the human side of leadership is setting people up for success and having them feel like they're being properly supported in, being able to effectively get the work done that they're being asked to do, right? And to take it even a step further, that they have a proper contribution to the work that they are doing and how they're approaching it, right? I mean, that should be a much more of a conversation and team decision versus top down dictation of these are the tasks that need to be immediately accomplished, right? Because work has gotten a lot more complex than that, and it's a lot more dynamic than that. And I think the other thing that's really important is the ability to measure outcomes, right? And so most organizations have KPIs or OKRs or key objectives that they're tracking and trying to hit. And I think we've done a great job of being able to map the constructs that are part of our model to those KPIs and being able to show, which ones are most impactful and how the behaviors and the behavior changes that are being made as part of the Rejuvi model are contributing to those business outcomes. And
Mhm.
hopefully those business outcomes include things not just like, increased revenue per employee or some of the other common financial metrics, which are definitely going to be there, but they also include some of the more humanistic sides of leadership, like employee well-being and engagement and those kind of things. So I love that we do that mapping, and we've done that mapping, and every time we see a new KPI and we can map it into the model, it just makes it all the more powerful. So yeah,
Yeah,
there's just an amazing amount of opportunity.
yeah. Let me just go into the largest group of this modern leadership bench that is underserved on multiple levels. I'm going to actually go into team leaders. And what you're going to see and I'm going to move so I can move some things around is that for each of these leaders, there's just so many possibilities and research and modeling that allows you to help them, And so, for example, here's this thing that comes together with your C or your IQ, and then your no or your EQ, and then your do as your
AQ.
AQ. And then, that's also making sure that's what builds this think to drive continuum, this long and strong continuum that makes this team leader. In this case, it's Michael Felici. It makes him a fantastic, compassionate human leader. But these four building blocks come together, for working from strategic intent. I think most people think about running a business, kind of the big picture, where are we going, why are we going there, kind of work. And then you put together, which is its strategic intent. And then you start thinking about breaking it apart into doable pieces for the short term. This kind of strategic intent, big picture to short-term implementation is how most people have kind of run most team leaders they've run their lines. But here's the thing, we know that because of the complexities and the innovation and the transformation that modern leaders are expected to lead, you can't just depend upon those two pieces. You have to have this middleware. And it is also about business unit intelligence, and it is also about figuring out the targeting work. It's kind of like business unit intelligence is understanding what the actual possibilities for the right work actually is. And then target is taking that right work and it's putting together new ways of making it happen. And then you move into implement a whole lot differently, because you're trying to decide, okay, based on that, how much should we actually bite off and chew for the short term? So this building block, this continuum of helping the business to build and sustain at the same time, long and strong continuum, what makes the business fantastic, but also helps this leader to be a fierce business leader. It kind of gets organized in this way that we call the backward Z. I don't know that that's necessarily here nor there, but think about writing a Z backwards, and that's how a team leader is actually doing it. And so you can actually take all this work, and I'm just going to click on this little picture right here. I talked about Michael. And I'm just going to, just for a moment, go to a storyboard based on his persona around how does all of this come to life, and how can we help Michael, in this case, to become that compassionate leader, to become that fierce business leader, and how can we, just like you said, bring him the feedback and the analytics to help him to navigate every single step of the way, which you actually see right here in this kind of rectangle with lots of red and yellow and green in kind of heat map form. So let me get back to it's like, okay, let me get back to, sometimes I think getting back to a document while you're inside of Zoom is sometimes a little bit challenging. Okay, here we go. I'll do it one more time, and I'll share my screen. Here we go. Yes. And we'll share. There we go. So we're kind of back to this nuanced understanding of backbone for a team leader. It's not just the backbone that from think to drive, but it's this backbone right here, this nuanced backbone process that helps them to run a really strong business from build to sustain. And every single one of these leaders on the leadership bench, we can take these backbone processes and we can unpack them. The backbone process by building block doesn't change. So for example, if we went to a sales leader, we would see, oh, yep, there's the backbone process for think to drive. There's the backbone process for build to sustain. And if we actually clicked on, in this case, Daniel Konachek, who's a district sales manager, if we clicked on his persona, we'd start to see how all of that kind of plays out. But both of those backbone processes exist for a modern leader. And I want to take this, and doing that is super important, because until we serve those two backbone processes, we're not really serving these 89.9 million people who are leading something in the future of work. And if we're not doing that, we're not serving this modern leadership bench, you know? And it's the story of Rejuvi, right? It's why we do what we do. But I want to take this back, Charlie. Just we've only got a couple of minutes, but I want to take this back to something that you were talking about. One of the reasons why, from a historical perspective, why we haven't served all leaders. We haven't we know it's not just about acknowledging them that we're asking them to lead something, but we haven't it hasn't been cost effective to do so because we haven't had the right, I think, modeling, number one. But I think that we also haven't had access to emerging analytic tool sets and technology tool sets like we have today. And I think that that's changing the game in terms of being able to do things with more efficacy and more efficiently than we ever have been before, right? And so I want to connect it back to this comment that you made around there's some cost related issues to not serving the backbone, but that's
Yeah.
changed. Yeah, do you want to speak to
Yeah. So I think,
that,
yeah,
Charlie?
sure. So I'll start out with, I think I've been through a lot of leadership development courses and in-person programs and that kind of stuff. And I think my experience and as I've done some more reading on the research in the space, one of the number one responses people respond with after they've done some of this leadership development coursework is when they're asked, what did you get out of it? Their network and relationships are the biggest thing, right? And so and because of that, I think there was a lot of money spent on a lot fewer activities because to get people together in the same location and whatever that created the relationship building process, which I'm not saying isn't critically important, but there was a lot of spend that was going on things that maybe weren't providing the benefits to the organization that program designers had thought they would. I mean,
Yeah,
you could almost focus on, a shorter event that was more focused on the relationship building and that kind of stuff. But to a certain extent, that's neither here nor there. But I think it's important to understand that because that's some of the past history on, where the dollars were flowing, why it was so expensive, and often, daunting to start taking your line leaders who obviously there's an increasing number of those, right? And you try to do, those type of events and it just gets cost prohibitive.
yeah,
So I think there are two things. One, I think from a Rejuvi perspective, we're trying to provide some even more meaningful um, thoughts, um, assessments, evaluation, and tools that really help leaders in all parts of the organization, right? So I think there's some even more meaningful content, which is great. And then the other thing is we've really focused on a delivery mechanism that is more of a software as a service model where, there's a service we're providing. So we have a product, but it's not like we're just lifting and putting a product in place and it's kind of done. This is more of a service concept. It's an ongoing process, and it's almost a living, breathing entity where you're providing more data, you're getting different analytics, things change in a quarter, and then you're doing some reevaluation with additional data and analytics. And so it's a living, breathing organism, and it's providing constant guidance to leaders. So it's a service and a product and a capability that is with them more on a day-to-day basis, right? And I think the other big thing with you talk about emerging technologies, just the access to data now. So there's so much data that's available. It doesn't need to be structured anymore. So you can have these unstructured data lakes. And then the compute capabilities that you can put on top of that, whether it's machine learning, whether it's utilizing some more synapse relationships through like graph database technology, whatever the case may be. It's really expanding our ability to process that data and recommend next best actions or nudge leaders to do certain things based on data that we're seeing on like an hourly, daily basis, right? And so it's, our ability to embed that in the platform is really transformational as well and lets us do a lot more things, a lot more, I would just say cost effectively for people and put a lot more, a lot richer capability, at the hands of even more leaders more cost effectively.
It's a wonderful time to, I think, be working, and it's a really wonderful time to be in the modern leadership space, because the possibilities for us to support a modern leadership bench, right? Just to really be of service and of value to people who want to do something better, right? They want to learn how to solve their problem. They want to learn to innovate. They want to learn to run the transformation better than they have before. So it's just a wonderful, I think, time to be of service to those people. And I also, I think about today's title, Backbone. When we first started Rejuvi, we really thought about backbone as being more singular, that yes, the backbone was about acknowledging that there are all of these folks that are leading something on behalf of their organization. But as we have continued to pioneer modern leadership, I think that we've started to learn that the talking about this modern leadership bench, in addition to talking about these other backbones, the process pieces of it, are equally as important, because you need to service backbone leaders. And in order to help them to be really fantastic, you're going to have these be very clear about what these modern processes look like to make them strong as a human leader, to make them strong as a business leader. So I love even how I think our own learning has come along, and providing better and better communication, and almost like a better, like almost clarity around the North Star of and what the North Star actually is, when the North Star is called modern leadership.
Agreed.
Yep. Thank you, Charlie, for coming in today, to kind of flying in, landing, having our Chicago popcorn, getting a little rest, and then coming on the call today to talk about this important topic. For those of you who are watching a recording of this, thank you for doing so. We appreciate all of the views. And we will be back next week, next Thursday, with a topic called Serve the Many. Until then, be well, and let us know how we can be helpful to you in your modern leadership journey. Thank you.